So just a reminder, I will be coming to the audience for questions soon too, although obviously I have plenty of my own. If I didn't, I'd be a really terrible journalist. So let's start with the kind of premise of this panel. And I think when we were thinking about it, we were considering how can we make it a bit more provocative, because we could all sit here and nod and agree that the environment's very important and we should all do better at CSR, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just think about the world right now in terms of kind of cost pressures, cost of living crisis, all of these issues that businesses are fighting with, and maybe sustainability has fallen down the agenda. So before we tackle that, I'm just going to introduce our panelists that have just joined us on stage. So at the far end, we have Tamma Carrel. Is it Carrel?
Carrel, yes.
Perfect. Founder of Imvelo, and that's an environmental agency. So what exactly does that mean? And then you also have a SaaS business, don't you?
I do, yes. So Imvelo is an environmental consultancy and training business that specializes in helping larger organizations integrate the Sustainable Development Goals into their corporate strategy. Before businesses can kind of figure out how to do better, there is kind of a bare minimum, and that is currently founded in UK regulation. Mm-hmm. It's not a perfect system, but it is a system, you know, it's something. And what I realized was actually a lot of businesses had the ambitions to do better, but that foundational, you know, bare minimum, don't pollute the environment, they were actually struggling with. So the SaaS business has come out to help organizations make sense of legislation as a starting point to figure out what they can do better and how to do better.
That's great, and I believe you're a first-time tech founder, so it's really interesting. Probably a discussion for another day about how, as a consultant, then you learn to build a tech business, but good for you. So next to you, we have Lovelda Vincenzi, is that
correct? Yeah.
Perfect. And I'm really pleased that I pronounced your name correctly, given the line of work you're in. So you're a moderator specialising in climate and sustainability events, am I right?
Correct, yes.
And so you've interviewed everyone from Monica Lewinsky, I believe, which is very exciting indeed. What an amazing feminist she is, to Paul Polman, who obviously is a great leader in this space. See you nodding along, Paul and fellow climate activist. So just give us a bit of a snippet into the work you do.
Yeah, I stumbled into this space, so I kind of understand when it comes to the notion of, you know, why should we care? Why is it that big of a deal? I do some really big events in the sustainability space. That's resulted in me doing more events in the sustainability space, and therefore interviewing a large number of people who are from various different businesses in a number of different sectors, from regenerative agriculture to plastic pollution to oceans to equality for women and so on and so forth. So it has given me quite a bit of insight into, you know, what are the real pain points that sit behind businesses and startup founders trying to do different. I often interview innovators in this space.
Amazing. So we'll come back and draw on some of those in just a second. So Caitlin Hicks is Sustainability Manager at Nuevo, a creative agency with a bit of a difference. So you help brands to grow sustainably, right? So what does that mean?
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's fair to say the advertising industry hasn't really been the best at taking responsibility for fueling the climate crisis, right? And, you know, encouraging people to buy products they probably don't really need. And so Nuevo was born out of this idea that marketing, advertising needs to step up and not just think about the way that we communicate sustainability to customers and encourage them to buy better products, but also the way that we create that content in the first place. So what is being shown in advertisements, is that encouraging sustainable behaviors, but also, you know, how are you creating that film? How are you, you know, capturing those photographs? Is that being done in a sustainable way? So it's also about, you know, not just what's happening in front of the camera and what you're showing, but also what happens behind the camera as well.
So we'll come back, because I think we should talk about greenwashing, because I find it endlessly fascinating. So we'll come back to that in just a second. But just with the premise of this panel to begin with, Tamma, we were talking about this in the green room just now. So do we think it's fair to say, and there's actually quite a lot of studies, and I've written about some of them in the Times, that show that sustainability has very much fallen down the agenda in the last few years during the economic crisis that we've faced. Is that, is that representative of your experience?
I mean, no. I think awareness of sustainability as a subject is most certainly ramping up. We have more access to information. We are better educated in some of the challenges, and we also have kind of more science sitting behind us that tells us that this is a legitimate challenge of the future and something we should very much be paying attention to. I think what is also kind of shifting in the background a little bit is more the way that businesses do sustainability. And actually, that's a bit oxymoronic, because sustainability is the destination. It's where we're trying to get to. But it's how businesses are trying to make sense of all of those challenges, how they are, collecting data and information about what those challenges are, and kind of how they then communicate that. We're becoming more aware that the science is a little bit more complicated than that. So whereas we might have hailed, a CSR report as being groundbreaking kind of 10 years ago, we're certainly more critical of the methods and the tools that exist. And is this in fact the right way to be progressing sustainability, or does, the system in which we operate need a bit of a shake-up?
Okay. And Caitlin, so the clients that you work with, presumably, over the last couple of years, when we found ourselves in these difficult economic times, your work hasn't decreased, right? People still want to talk about these incredible initiatives they're doing, and they want to do it in a sustainable way.
Yeah, for sure. Ultimately, brands sell to customers, and customers haven't stopped caring about this. Obviously, there are some concerns over the cost of living crisis, some of the atrocities that are happening all around the world. But generally speaking, if you look at, the EU do a survey, for example, and the climate crisis is still the third most important topic that's weighing on people's minds. And, I'd say the desire to purchase more sustainable products is increasing. But also what's increasing is the confusion about how to do that from the consumer perspective. And as companies want to talk more about it, they're also being hit by confusion and a lack of confidence about how to communicate it in the best way. And actually what we're seeing is the more consumers are demanding information, clarity on which brands they should be buying from, governments are catching up to that. They're setting new regulations. The EU Green Claims Directive has just been agreed, and that'll be rolling out across member states over the next 2 years, which is designed to protect customers from being misled through greenwashing, where companies will effectively lie, whether intentionally or sometimes intentionally, unintentionally, to their customers to try and sell more of their products. So it's about addressing that greenwashing and protecting consumers. And also in the States, we've got the Federal Trade Commission releasing their new green guides at some point this year. And so companies are like, oh, how do we respond to that, and how do we make sure that ultimately we're not going to be sued? And actually there is a commercial imperative there, not to obviously get dragged through the headlines because you've overstepped on your sustainability claims, but also, to protect your bottom line of talking about some of your environmental and social work as well. So I definitely say any silence in this space, or the perception that it's taking a backseat, is about just getting through the next couple of years with businesses and customers understanding what they can say and matching the right businesses with the right customers. And then I think it's just going to increase. And that's where we come in as an agency to help brands navigate that ever-evolving and rapidly changing space.
And it's not just greenwashing, is it? It's also kind of diversity washing, gender washing. I wrote about recently, so the lack of women in venture capital, for example. So what loads of VC firms have done is they've brought in loads of women, but they're kind of at the bottom ranks of the firm. And then actually when you look at the partner level, it's still as diabolical, if not worse than ever. So it's really important there are journalists like me who will scrutinise, right? If a company comes out and says it's doing great things for the environment, it's doing great things about diversity, but when we scratch beneath the surface, there's not much, there's not much substantial evidence of that. So what do you think, Lovelda, when you speak to leaders, are they worried about kind of coming out there, putting themselves up on a pedestal and saying, you know, like Paul Polman, right? He is, so should we explain a bit about who Paul Polman is?
Yeah, he's the ex-CEO of Unilever. He was one of the people behind the SDRs, the Sustainability,
Goals.
Development goals, that's it. So there's 12 goals, is it?
17.
17 goals, that sustainability, gender equality, there's education-related goals. So it's essentially setting out how we should be engaging with each other to have equality and be able to live much more rich lives for a lot longer period of time.
Mm-hmm. And so, of course, he put himself out there and he's become like a pioneer, right? When I mentioned his name earlier, Paul, you nodded in recognition because he is seen as being a pioneer. But once you put yourself out on that platform, you have to live that, don't you? You can't step out of line at all because otherwise a journalist from the Times or Sunday Times might call you up and say, why are you driving your gas-guzzling 4x4? So do you feel that, Paul? You know, as somebody who's out there very publicly speaking about this, you can't just talk about it, you have to live those values.
Yeah, I think I'm probably aware. I mean, I've got a Tesla, by the way, but
good to know.
just for the record. But yeah, we are aware of it, but we're also aware that we're not perfect, and some of this stuff is linked to government policy, and businesses can only do what they can do, and obviously it's not sustainable to not be here in 5 years as well. So if we really want to see the kind of change we probably all want to see, there's going to have to be some legislation as well as businesses absolutely doing as much as they possibly can to be better. It will have to be both if we're going to see that systemic change we need to see.
And you mentioned the government there. How much do you think government policy influences the way we all think about this? Obviously, we saw a U-turn from Rishi Sunak. Well, we've seen a few. But one of the ones we saw towards the end of last year was around net zero and the net zero pledges, right? And whilst, you know, people are busy running their businesses, but that contributes to the climate, forgive the pun, around this stuff, right? So if the Prime Minister is saying, actually, it's not so important, guys, you've got longer to trade in your gas guzzler, what kind of tone does that set from the top?
Well, the wrong one, probably, but I think there was a survey done after that, and actually it did show that he was out of step with the majority of the population, which is very different to, say, even 5 years ago. So those kind of policies now aren't vote winners. It's the green policies that are becoming vote winners as more and more younger people are obviously coming into the voting age. So
I suspect that depends on where you are in the country, right? We've seen all the furore around in London with Sadiq Khan bringing in the various charges, but I think...
Yeah, but so there was some data on that at the weekend, that the air pollution in London has now been measured as the lowest for 20 years or something. I can't remember exactly. So is that not a good thing? As more of those messages come out, I think people will, okay, I get it now.
And I wonder if it's a generational thing as well. If it's I hate to stereotype, I'm very sorry, but if there's older generations who want to have the right to drive certain cars, or they see it as their freedoms being restricted, whereas perhaps the younger age groups. Tamma, you're looking a little bit dubious.
Sorry, my face is quite...
You have a terrible poker face.
It doesn't lie. No, I think there's a few things in there that are quite interesting. So to follow on from what Paul said, you know, government uncertainty, whether it's about green agenda issues or anything else, like uncertainty is not great for the market. You know, it does tend to make things somewhat confusing. But actually the overwhelming response from business was, well, you do you, but we're going to keep doing this because it makes really good business sense to keep doing this. And we've already invested an immense amount of time, effort, energy, money, science into figuring out how we're going to get forward. We're not going to stop. You know, so it's quite an interesting space. I mean, I work with businesses intentionally because I actually do think they can move faster than the government, and they have kind of the greatest ability to influence up and down, which is quite exciting. And then just kind of following on from what you said about, you know, walking the walk, I think there's two things I want to say to that. Is the first is we shouldn't expect perfect sustainability because it doesn't exist, you know, so to kind of say, well, you've purported to be great and yet there's all these things we can pick holes in, it's kind of the way of the world at the moment. But what we're looking for, and it is a theme that we've seen in all the talks this morning, is authenticity, so telling the truth and like really living your values, and then being transparent. So some things are working and other things aren't working, and as long as we have all of that information that is honest and accurate, or as accurate as it can be at this point in time, then that's what the public is crying for. Like, we just want to see behind the curtain a little bit and understand what's working, what's not working, and more interestingly, when things aren't working, why? What are we learning? How can we share experiences so that someone might actually come and do better next time?
Okay, so on that subject of learning, and obviously everyone here is here to learn, sorry. We've seen here a question coming in about simple steps, so I think it's really good for us to give our audience some kind of practical advice on how they can get some of this right. If they haven't got £100,000 to invest in a more sustainable building, for example, what are some of the small things that they can do to get started on this journey, Paul?
Copy. I mean, most of our good ideas have been copied from other businesses. So have a look at the one thing that B Corps have to do is publish their impact report so the world can see on the internet. Have a look at what other businesses are doing. It doesn't all cost money. Some of it does, but I mean, solar panels are a great example. It used to take 7 or 8 years to get your money back on solar panels. Now it's about 2.5 due to the cost of energy, so it's almost become a bit of a no-brainer, but that obviously requires a bit of borrowing. But there are many things you can do that don't cost money. Start with those first, and then move on to the things that will cost. And there are grants available for some of the environmental stuff, depending on what part of the country you're in. There is money available to help you be better, help you be more sustainable.
Lovelda, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, just because obviously you're going to have gleaned lots of insights from interviewing all these fantastic people. Just before I say that, we're going to come to the floor for questions in just a second. I can see there's a gentleman here. Any other offers of questions? Fantastic. We'll get a mic over to you in just a second. But Lovelda, what have you gleaned from all your interviews with these magnates?
I'd start with what Paul said. It doesn't have to be complicated. We can sit here and say it's difficult and it's really complicated, but did you need to make that drive? Does everybody need to be in a hotel? Do you need to be printing that stuff off?
Yeah, and buy that thing.
Did you have to buy that thing? Could you have bought it closer rather than shipped it in from internationally? And so I think there are some really simple, regardless of the size of the business, and some of these are actually going to make commercial sense to your organisation as well. You know, if you bin the printer altogether and go fully digital, you're saving yourself money. You know, it's a win all the way round. So I think it's a miss to think that anything that you're doing in this arena has got to cost 100,000 or it's got to be a huge investment. It doesn't. You know, what cleaning products are you using in the building? Could be a quick swap out. You know, what toilet paper are you using? So I think there's lots of little swaps that you can do very, very quickly to make a change. I think there's also lots of opportunities to collaborate. Sometimes what I've seen a lot with these discussions is it's a big problem. One organisation is not going to transform it. It's simply not. It's too complicated. There's too many moving parts. The only way we tackle sustainability and we tackle the climate crisis is we've got to work together. So where are there other organisations that you could partner with and work collaboratively with to be able to get faster results out, bigger results out faster? So I think it's just being the same business acumen you're applying to make money in the business. If you put that same thinking hat on with sustainability, there's lots of really quick, easy wins that are so accessible to any business at any size.
I love that. And that message around collaboration, hear that loud and clearly. I know you both probably have points to add to this too, and we will come back to it. But for now, let's just get a question from that gentleman there.
Hi, I'm Danny from Steam Arena, and one of the things that we're trying to do, so we incorporated at the start of the month, we're a community interest company, but I'm a service designer by trade, so we're really trying to build the idea of sustainability by design. I'm glad you mentioned the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I'm probably more aligned to poverty, hunger, communities, but we want to rip them apart and see how, as we build this from the ground up, how do we align to that? So when we work with businesses and businesses all over the UK, how can we create that narrative about sustainability by design?
Caitlin, have you got any thoughts to add to that?
I think that's super important and something that comes up a lot for us and the clients that we work with is this idea of circularity, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And it's about designing products to last and designing products in a way, and services in a way that means that you know, we often say that at Nuevo we start with the end in mind. So there's no such thing as a way. When you are creating something, what happens to it at the end? And I think that's super important. It's, you know, on the regulation side of things, it's highly likely that before too long, big companies are going to have to start thinking about taking responsibility for the end of a product's life and making sure that they are the ones that absorb that cost and they have a plan. So yeah, I definitely encourage everyone to look more into circular design. The idea being that at the moment our economy is linear, and so you know, you create something, someone uses it, and then it gets thrown away. Sometimes, you know, things are recycled, which is great, but, you know, there's only a few materials that can be infinitely recycled. So you want to think of ways to make sure they're being reused, repurposed for other things, and end up in the right place. And the right place is not in a tip or in a landfill somewhere. So I think that principle of circularity is super important. My recommendation would be to read Donut Economics by Kate Raworth. I think that book changed my life.
There we go. We love a book recommendation. So we've got a couple here. Let's take them both at the same time, and then we'll direct them to the most relevant speaker. Hi.
Hello. My question is related to greenwashing. I think as a people who is working with other businesses, it's very important to understand when the greenwashing is happening and how to question that and what would be the next action. So what are the red alarm signs for that?
Wow. Okay, Tamma, I'm going to come to you first.
Okay.
How do you know if someone's greenwashing?
So I think just picking up on something Caitlin said earlier, I think there is, you know, this kind of perception that all greenwashing is intentionally trying to, you know, misdirect us or confuse us or sell us a lie. And I don't think that's the truth. I actually think a lot of greenwashing that we witness is unintentional, is inadvertent. Businesses are trying to communicate about the right thing. It's just that they don't quite understand what that thing is. Unfortunately, that is the complexity of climate science and sustainability science. And the problem is there's a lot of words that we use. And when you kind of like fundamentally break it down, it's sort of a game I love to play when I work with a business. You know, I go in and they go, we want to do net zero. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? It's like tumbleweed across the boardroom. Like, you know, how can we achieve something if we don't understand the words that we're using? So I think, you know, that is the best way, is obviously really understand as much as you can about the science, choose your words quite intentionally. The other thing is that there is the Competition and Marketing Authority has developed some guidelines based on something that came out, I think, in about 2009, called the 7 Sins of Greenwashing. So there are 7 criteria that would help you identify, and if you just Google 7 Sins, it was an organization called TerraCycle, I think, who pulled that out. So yeah, you can kind of like run it through that filter of, are we intentionally or unintentionally sinning in the context of greenwashing? And then if you read the CMA guidelines, it's literally the complete opposite. So like, don't do that, do this, is the best way to try and protect yourself.
Lovelda, I see you wanted to add something.
Just a really quick thing. I actually interviewed somebody today for a panel I'm doing in a few weeks, and they do plastic linings made from seaweed that goes inside food containers. And he was sharing with me, it's just building on the point of often it's unintentional. So companies are wanting to use sustainable materials, 100% no plastic. They've all gone and put these in their, bought them. They've then gone off and told their clients and their customers, we're 100% sustainable, there's no plastic. The government of the Netherlands then put legislation in, sent their people out to check. The only company that passed it was this client that I'm speaking to, right? So I say all that to say, greenwashing is a really easy term to throw around and say the company's doing bad. It's a complex issue. If we as individuals can't understand it, it's individuals running companies. And sometimes the information we've got, we just haven't fact-checked it fully enough, or we don't fully understand what the issues are. So I think it's just useful to have that balance when it comes to greenwashing. And perhaps let's give people a little bit of a benefit of a doubt before we start slandering them on the internet, because maybe it was a good-intentioned individual.
Yeah.
We're going to come to another question, but there's also the B Corp, right? Yeah. Which is a stamp of approval. So I think that's a pretty good one.
So am I understanding correctly that we are not fully understanding the problem that we're trying to solve in that case?
Sometimes it's that, or in this instance, that the example that I gave, the organizations were saying they were 100% plastic free, and there was like a 1% use of plastic in it. So it was nominal, but it wasn't factually correct. And that's what caught them out.
I'm very sorry, but we're going to have to move on. Thank you so much for your contributions. Sir.
Hi, my name's Mark. I run a presentation design agency called 6 Miles High. I'd love us to be a B Corp, but we're very small. We're a micro agency, a nano agency. Is there a sort of minimum size of company you would recommend goes through the B Corp process? Because I know there are some costs involved.
It's a really good question.
If you're small, very low costs. But no, there are B Corps that have no employees, just one person on their own. Obviously, you don't get any worker points, so you might need to be a bit better in the other areas to get over the line. But no, absolutely. In fact, there's a lot more micro businesses B Corps than there are businesses that are our size. So yeah, go for it.
Excellent. We have another couple of questions. Oh, let's see how many we can fit in before I get told off in my ear. Artie, let's come to you first.
It's a quick question to you, Paul. You spoke about, really, I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on how you won your staff around and in what time frame that actually took. Because you talked about, putting some initiatives in, like making everybody go and volunteer. And I think it would just be really interesting to learn a little bit more about how you won them round.
Yeah, very brief.
Richard says a little bit.
Yeah,
we mean
I won't elaborate too much. So, yeah, initially I heard about B Corp. It was, this is brilliant, we need to be one. Very much led from the top initially. I would say it probably took us 2 years to kind of embed that into the culture of the business. And the benchmark, whether we've done that, is now our impact report, because when I get that to have a look before it goes to print, a lot of the stuff in there I don't actually know about. So, yeah, it's you good point to highlight. It's not overnight. I think it would be quicker now because things have moved on a lot since 2015. But yes, most people want this stuff. They don't know how to do it. So when you, as a company leader, if you're saying we're going for it, I think a lot of people would be on board.
And presumably it's also depending on the size of the organisation. How many people do you employ?
About 110, 115.
And what's your turnover?
About 28 million.
Exactly. So it's like that turning around an oil tanker type analogy, right, compared to a micro business. We have one final question before we're out of time.
Hi, I'm Hortense, and I own a brand of nuts and seed snacks. So sustainability is at the core of my business. One of my ribs were removed, 2/3 of my shoulder blade is removed. So it's health, and health is at the middle of my brand. So sustainability is really important. My question is, a lot of the conversation about sustainability is very high brow, and the conversation is complicated, the jargon and all that, but the population does not understand it. How do you bring, especially to you, Paul, how do you bring your customer in the journey with you? So you do that at the top end, but how do you get them to apply that in their own lives?
It's definitely complicated and complex, and one thing we do end up doing is doing some level of education. I mean, a good example is the plastic versus glass. Big, 2019, May, Blue Planet, everyone was anti-plastic, and for some products, actually recyclable PET is better because it emits 10 times less carbon than making glass. So, again, it's starting with what we can. It's huge. There is huge complexity in this, and we can all do our bit to educate people, find out more ourselves. We're all still learning and help inch forward as the years go by.
Well, I think that's a wonderfully positive note to end on. All that remains is for me to thank my panel, Tamma, Lovelda, Caitlin and Paul. Thank you very much. Let's give them a huge round of applause.